Welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, where we bring sight to the blind and freedom to those enslaved by our pornified culture. Here, we dive into hard but important topics such as pornography, sexual identity, true freedom, real love, and living marriage well. Go deep with us as we uncover what Redeemed Vision means for each of us living in the world today. Come to know yourself, the power of redemption through Jesus Christ, the joy of laughter, and how to live in gratitude and wonder. This is Redeemed Vision.
Greetings and welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, a special edition. This is Steve Picorni coming at you. This is a product and outreach of freedom-coaching.net, where we are breaking the chains of both men and women of attachment to pornography, unchaste behavior. It's an honor to be with you. I want to do a shout out to Matt Walsh, and I want to personally dialogue with him as an invitation on something that he recently put up on a recent podcast a few weeks back, where he made the claim that pornography is not an addiction. And what I want to say first on here is I agree with him, right? And there's actually three things that he said that, four things actually, that he said that I totally agree with that he's talking about. And I think, Matt, that you are I think a graduate of Franciscan University, if I have my facts straight. So I'm a former grad as well. So just as to open this up in this discussion here, and it was a short video that I saw. And again, for those who are watching this and listening to this, we'll put the link at the bottom in the description here, so you can listen to the original discussion that Matt put out there. And first thing he says that I definitely that he wants to do, he wants to put for age restrictions and limiting young people, especially the access to pornography, and also he wants to burn the entire pornography industry down to the ground and do a fun little dance after that. We agree with you, right? I'm in total agreement with you. This pornography is not helpful. It does not help us to become a better person, but actually steals our life from us. And it's also, he makes it very clear that it's individuals. The answer is not the restrictions ultimately, but it's individual people that need to be set free, right? This is critically important, and it is the individuals that have to do the work to be set free. And in our work in freedom coaching, where we work with many men and women who have all different walks of life. I've worked with an 8-year-old, I've worked with an 81-year-old, trying to be done with this, and that there's work that has to be done to get themselves free. I think that's really important. Third thing he says, totally agree with you. Yes, I agree. Pornography is not an addiction, right? And if we're using this terminology, we're making the issue worse. And I'll make a commentary on the term addiction, but I just want to get the places where we're on the same common ground, Matt. And then fourth thing is, I think you do put out a very important point, is the hard things in life to do are often very simple. And yes, this is a simple thing to do, but it is hard, right? To be done, to be broken away from this issue. So I think that's important. Now for some of the distinctions, right? Matt, you bring up some of the definitions that are commonly used for the term addiction. And it's just so we're all on the same page here, because this is where a lot of people are at. I think that we throw the term addiction around. This is why I agree with you, Matt, that it's not the appropriate terminology to use. Now, you didn't give the correct terminology, which I want to talk about. So you mentioned the American Psychiatric Association said it's a complex but treatable disease that affects brain function and behavior. It's a brain disorder from another one. I think it was the NIH said is where in general, an addiction is where we lose control over doing, taking, or using something to the extent that causes harm to the person doing those behaviors. And it's also a dependency or disorder. And that very much is true for the term addiction here. Now, this is where I would answer you, Matt, that if pornography is not an addiction, then it's a compulsion. Okay, what's the distinction? What's the difference we want to make? Well, first off, and just on a basic level, when people hear the idea addiction, they hear once hooked, always hooked. And it's kind of like some people going to an AA meeting or a 12-step program, and this isn't to knock AA or 12-step completely, or Sexaholics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous or any of those programs. There's accountability, there's community, and we firmly believe here in Freedom Coaching and the work we do that community is a really important thing, and accountability also is important as well, right? But many times it's the idea once hooked, always hooked, that because I have this issue, then I'm always going to be dealing with this forever. And I want to make this very clear. My expertise is not in the field of alcoholism. There is some, just from the little I've learned, there is some evidence pointing to the fact that it has something to do with genetics regarding alcoholism. And that's quite a possibility. That's why I guess a person could use the term addiction there, perhaps because you're dealing with a chemical substance one has to take in, and it becomes unmanageable in many cases. Now, the terminology that we want to use here is going to be compulsion. And a compulsion is the idea that it's an attachment, it's serious, it needs to be dealt with because it is causing chaos, it is wreaking havoc in a person's life. It is very destructive and keeping me from being the best version of myself. So I absolutely would agree with the fact that it's a major problem. But here's the difference. Whereas in the colloquial understandings where addiction is once hooked, always hooked, we want to say very clearly, while it's serious and it has to be dealt with, it can be that this can be healed, that a person doesn't have to be trapped in this compulsion forever, that there's a way forward. And this is very hopeful for many, many people hearing this. So if you're struggling in your own life and you're trying to figure this out, right? And speaking to any of Matt's audiences or our audience or anyone else who might stumble upon this video or this podcast, I want to let you know that there's always hope. There's hope and healing. We believe it's hope and healing ultimately in Jesus Christ, who gives us grace to live a spectacular life. Yes, we're called to live a natural life, but also we're called to live a supernatural life. And it's only by grace we're able to do that, right? So this is where the problem comes in. And basically, again, it was a short video, and he's putting a plug in for Daily Wire to subscribe so that you can listen to the whole episode. So there might be more behind the curtain on this. Okay, so I'm not claiming that Matt may have more nuances he want to put out there, but the issue is with what we saw in about the 12-minute video. He didn't give many solutions, and your solution was just stop watching it. Okay, so here's where I want to get to some of the corrections on this, right? And five areas that need to be highlighted here if we're going to approach an answer. Number one here, breaking a porn compulsion, it's not a matter of mere willpower. Okay, I love this line here. Anybody who says like if porn's not my issue, and I see somebody who's dealing with pornography, just stop watching it. Just stop watching it. Well, if we know anything about the brain science, and I wrote an entire book called Redeemed Vision, Setting the Blind Free from the Pornified Culture. And you can also check out a little bit of that on a platform known as Formed, if you can get access to it. If you're Catholic, go into a Catholic parish. Many parishes have access to this for free. It's called Redeeming Our Vision. There's a study guide that goes along with that goes into this. And the third episode in that, or third chapter in the book, Redeemed Vision, which is a lot more in depth, talks about the brain science of pornography. And if we know anything about the brain chemicals that are going this with dopamine, norepinephrine, oxytocin, with serotonin, testosterone, any of these chemicals here, these are the same chemicals that are stirred up when entering into healthy marital intercourse. They're the same chemicals as what happens when we enter into the use of pornography, right, in a lustful way. But what we find is, as a person watches more and more and more, it's the same chemicals that are stirred up, but a very different result. And it impacts us profoundly. And for anybody who finds themselves trapped in this, can't seem to let go of it. Okay, so and Matt, I do believe that you are well intentioned, right? You do want to call out, because I think a lot of people get trapped behind the notion, well, it's an addiction. There's nothing I can do, and my life must be over. No, we want to say, especially from a very Catholic perspective, right? As we say, there's natural and they're supernatural. Grace builds on nature. So there is grace, and we can do nothing apart from God's life, love, and power. That's what we believe grace is. But from here is we have to participate with that grace. We do have our work to do. But if we're trying to do this all in our own power and facing a massive attachment with all these chemicals, we're going to lose. Because another way we can say, if you take pure reason, which Matt, this is the way you're trying to approach this, is from a very reasonable approach, right? And reason is one thing. But if you pit pure reason versus pure emotion, emotion is going to win every time. Okay, it doesn't matter how much we know about this thing. I mean, we learned from the 1980s, knowing is half the battle, G.I. Joe, right? Well, in this whole thing, right, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. Go back and watch it. From this, it's not simply knowing, but it's about the idea that our emotions have to be in a line here. So that would be the first thing, right? It's not a matter of mere willpower. You can't just fake it till you make it. Okay. The second one we want to say here is that if you want to change a habit, if I want to change a habit, I must change my environment. Okay. So this is along the line, and I do agree, Matt, there's something to be said to cutting off access. Okay. This is where things like having screen limitation for children, right? Having the age verification, very important stuff, especially if we have children. Children have impulse control problems all the time. Matt, I know you know this. But also with, for some people who find themselves on the phone too much or heading down to pornography sites or pornified sites, they need to have screen accountability partners, right? Such things like Covenant Eyes or something like that. And those are good in themselves, right? So we do have to go and change the environment. Where are we watching this, right? We have to go and change up the ritual in which we're doing this behavior. I think those things are critically important, right? So I think you did hit on some of that, but we want to be as precise as possible, because this is an issue, let's be frank, is devastating countless millions of men and an increasing number of women who are involved with this worldwide, right? And many people are looking for answers on this. So we need to change the environment. So one of the things we'll teach to our clients is two elements. One is that of inner sanctum, right? Our inner sanctum is us, our mind, heart, body, soul, spirit. All these elements here, 5 big elements that make up the human person in a very real degree. We've got to be working on those. Where are our thoughts? Where are our emotions? Are we aware of this? Are we working through these things? Very important. And then we have the inner sanctum's us, the inner outer sanctum. And this would be specifically where that room where we tend to have the problem. For a lot of clients, for us, it's that in their bedroom or their bathroom, right? So changing up what I'm doing with there. Obviously, access to material, where we're getting that. A lot of people, it's on their cell phone, right? Where are we putting that cell phone before we go in there, right? If we don't, just one very practical thing here, if we are using that for an alarm to wake up in the morning, why don't we go to this little website? It's called Amazon. You don't have to go there, but they sell things. They sell things like alarm clocks. So we can go ahead and buy an alarm clock that begins to change the environment. And then my phone goes out of the room, put it somewhere where I'm not going to get access to it. I think there's something true to be said there. So what are the other environmental places that we need to look at, right? So a third one here we want to say for approaching this issue is that action beats inaction almost every time. Okay, to do something, get out here, right? So Matt, to a degree, I'm going to agree with you on this, right? We have to do something. Or you propose the idea, if I were proposed $1 million, could you not watch pornography for a week, right? I'd love to take that bet because I haven't watched for years. So I'll take that bet, and you can pad my bank account. But here's the deal: is the action, taking actions on certain things are really important. So are we simply, and again, Matt, I'm not speaking this to you, but speaking to other people who are hearing this, that what are the different ways in which we're allowing this situation to take place? This is going to connect with number 2 of changing our environment. That's going to be very, very important, right? So what are the different actions that we're refusing to take here, right? And maybe, just maybe there's promptings of God or our conscience that we're not listening to. We believe that God speaks to our conscience, right? So it's when we feel those emotions coming up, are we responding in another way, in an opposite way that's going to begin to meet some of those, what's going to really fulfill on here. All right, so allowing our actions, instead of just sitting that moment and saying it's inevitable and going for it, we're not going to see the change that needs to happen. The fourth issue that we want to say is the problem is not porn. Okay, the problem is not the pornography. The problem is not the compulsion itself. And by the way, we haven't even defined the issue. And I think if we're talking about the issue, you got to define the issue. Matt, I know you're a really good philosopher, so let's define the issue. It's not just the crap we see online. It's all around us, right? Pornography is any image, written, or audio that's trying to get us to use another person as a means of one's own selfish sexual gratification. Okay, so this is movies, television, magazines, definitely on the internet, as we've been talking about. But the problem is in this, right? Any pornography use, masturbation, any unchaste behavior, that's a cover job. It's not the main problem. And I want to speak especially to those who are dealing with this issue. There are deeper wounds here. There's deeper hurt here. Nobody uses pornography lustfully because they feel good about their lives. They go into here because what we call it blasted, bored, lonely, bored, let me try again, blasted, bored, hungry, lonely, angry, apathetic, stressed, tired, turned on, emotional, depressed. It's a mouthful. That's why we call it blasted, right? And we don't go into these behaviors because we feel great about ourselves. No, we go into these behaviors because we're trying to meet a genuine need with something that can never fill that space. It can be said, we're trying to, as Christopher West of the Theology Body Institute often talks about, we're trying to fill an infinite void with a finite pleasure. Okay, we're not made for mere finite. We're made for the infinite. But what happens is instead of opening ourselves up to the infinite, where God wants to come in there, give us grace to transform this. Instead, what we do, we want to swallow it whole. And we want to have just this possession, this moment here, okay? And so connected in here is the real, are we aware of these deeper wounds? And here's where, Matt, this is where I would strongly differ for you. Why, especially it's not a matter of willpower, we're dealing with trauma. When we fail to live out our bodies as gift, right? When anytime things happen to us, or we allow it happen with our sexuality, which is so incredibly entrenched into who we are. As you've talked about in your great documentary, which, by the way, thank you for instructing me. I finally have learned what is a woman. What's showing here is we have wounds when we misuse our sexuality, but even more, we have a misunderstanding of our sexuality. These wounds go deep, and many times it's from our childhood. So these are traumas that have to be dealt with, right? And traumas that aren't dealt with, right? It's been said, emotions buried alive are still alive, right? And that's where that fuel is coming from. We have to get to the underneath this. We have to pull up the engine here. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go in through this. Because yes, somebody might give you $1 million for not watching porn for a week. Well, but what about the rest of your life, right? If this fuel is still here, then and it's driven especially by the guilt, the shame, the self-hatred that is pushed by the behavior, the unchaste behavior, especially through pornography use, then we're going to keep going back to the septic tank. Okay, we're going to be, and that stuff will eventually cause us to be throwing up. And this is where we have to take a step back and say, what are my proclivities? What are some of the reasons why I'm going to pornography? What's happening there? And it can't just be, I'm going to do this. No, there's some bigger work here. And that's especially why the work we do in freedom coaching is so darn valuable, because we help people to get to the root, to heal it. This is what is very important. And then the last piece, just to highlight here, there's much more that can be said, is to end pornography use, we must change the desire. If you can throw as much of the incentives around as possible, right? But if a person desires to do this, if they want to do this, they're going to find a way, right? We can have all the web filters we want, but so you put it on my computer or my smartphone. I'm just going to buy another smartphone. I'll buy another computer. I'll go to an Apple store. I'll use porn there. I'll go to my public library, right? Because of freedom of speech and expression. Right? Or I'll just get some children's books, which now has porn in it, right? So This is critically important here. It's all around us. We are living in a pornified culture. What do we do with this? Well, twofold here. Number one is we must desire something much more attractive. The truth is, lust is boring, as my good friend Jason Everett likes to talk about, right? Lust is the name of a podcast, right? There's a name drop for you. Go check this out, right? Because we're made for something more. We don't pursue what we're looking for is true, good, and beautiful. And when we're in a good place, especially if some of our wounds have been healed, or a lot of our wounds, or most of our wounds have been healed from work with trauma, there's always more work to do. That's why I qualified it. Is we're gonna go back to the septic tank. But if we can find something that's way more satisfying, way more beautiful, and focus our attention there, because where my focus goes, my energy flows. Watch out what happens, right? So, and the other thing I want to say is, and this is Matt, where I agree and disagree, is we always have a choice. We do have a choice here, but our choice must be to love. And here's the deal: all of our mind, our heart, and our vision needs to be centered around the pursuit of what is true, good, and beautiful. Right? And so there's a formation that is required there. It's not simply one video. It's about creating relationships with others, as is reminded many times. If there's anything to be said in the addiction world, where the option of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. Same thing can be said about compulsion. We're looking for genuine connection, ultimately with God, a healthy connection with ourselves, our true self, and with others, healthy relationship. Well, if this has been a benefit to you and Matt, I would love to get together on either on your platform or our platform to talk more about this. And anyone who has found value to this, if you want to learn more about what we do, I encourage you to check out freedom-coaching.net. Please like this. Click the bell if it's an option there. Send this everywhere, because this is a message that needs to get out. There is hope. There is healing. But it's not on mere willpower. No, pornography is not an addiction. It's a compulsion. But there is real healing, wholeness that can come from this. So it's an honor to share with you, and we invite you again to check out freedom-coaching.net. And remember, don't just quit porn. Be transformed. Break the power of pornography. Nothing's wasted. Everything is redeemable. So until next time, I'm Steve Picorni with the Redeemed Vision Podcast.
The Redeemed Vision podcast is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. To learn more, check out freedom-coaching.net and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and MeWe.